Welcome back, everybody. Today's deep dive is going to be, well, it's a little complicated.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, we're going deep into the world of AI, but specifically looking at the idea of liability when things go wrong.
Yeah, and things do go wrong.
All the time, right.
Yeah.
So we're trying to figure out who's responsible, and I mean, this is like something you see
Absolutely.
ripped from the headlines like every single day.
Yeah, it's like a science fiction movie come to life,
Yeah.
where the robots are making decisions and things are happening that we don't expect.
And we don't know who's to blame.
Right.
So to help unpack this, we're actually looking at a really fascinating article.
Yeah, this is a good one.
From a Spanish law firm.
MCHM Abogados.
MCHM Abogados.
Yeah.
And the article is titled Responsabilidad Civil por Daños Causados por la IA. ¿Quién responde?
Which basically translates to civil liability for damages caused by AI. Who is responsible?
Okay, so
Yeah.
even if you don't speak Spanish, the title gets right to the point.
Right to it. Yeah,
No messing around. This is what we're talking about.
exactly.
So the first thing that strikes me is that this article is from a law firm, which suggests they're thinking about this in very practical terms.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They're thinking about like the real world implications.
Real world, like who's getting sued, who's paying damages, that kind of thing.
Exactly, yeah. Who's writing the checks when something goes wrong?
So let's get into the weeds a bit. The article starts by laying out the nature of AI and how it's fundamentally different from traditional technology.
Right, because it's not just a tool. It's like a system that can learn and adapt.
Right, and that's where things get tricky, right?
Absolutely.
Because if an AI makes a decision that causes harm,
Yeah,
can we really hold the AI itself accountable?
that's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And the article is pretty clear that, at least for now, the answer is no.
No, because
Okay.
AI is not a legal person.
Not yet, anyway.
Right, it doesn't have rights and responsibilities in the same way a human does.
Right, so you can't just sue an AI in court.
Okay, so if it's not the AI itself, then where does the buck stop? The article seems to suggest there are multiple layers of responsibility.
Yeah, like a chain of responsibility.
Okay.
That goes all the way back to the beginning.
So who's at the very beginning of that chain?
Well, you've got the developers, the people who created the AI system in the first place.
Okay, so the creators, the programmers.
Exactly.
What's their responsibility?
Well, the article argues that they have a responsibility to make sure their creation is safe to use.
Okay, so safe in the sense that it's designed and programmed properly.
Right.
It's not going to go haywire.
Exactly.
So if there's a flaw in the AI itself and that flaw leads to harm, then the developers could be held liable.
Yeah, like imagine a car manufacturer
Okay.
that sells a car with faulty brakes.
Right.
They can be held responsible if someone gets into an accident because of those brakes.
So it's a similar principle here. If you create something that's inherently dangerous because of a design flaw, you could be held responsible for the consequences.
Makes sense, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But what about the person actually using the AI, right?
Yeah.
They're not off the hook completely, are they?
No, not at all.
So what are the responsibilities of the user?
Well, they're obligated to use the AI responsibly.
Responsibly in what sense?
So that means understanding the AI's limitations,
Okay.
following any safety guidelines provided.
Like instructions, user manuals.
Exactly. And basically not being negligent.
Okay, so don't be stupid with it, basically.
Yeah, I mean, think of it like driving a car.
Okay.
You might have a car with perfect brakes, but if you drive recklessly,
Right.
you're still responsible if you cause an accident.
So even if the AI itself is working perfectly,
Yeah,
the user can still be held liable if they misuse it or don't use it properly.
exactly.
Okay, so we've got the developers and the users. Now, let's say something goes wrong, and it's not clear if it was the AI's fault or the user's fault.
Right, that
Okay.
gets complicated.
What happens then?
Well, the article introduces this really interesting concept called objective responsibility.
Objective responsibility.
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
So it's kind of like strict liability.
Okay,
Have you ever heard of that?
I think so, but remind me.
Okay, so strict liability is this legal principle where someone can be held responsible for damages,
Okay.
even if they weren't directly negligent.
Okay, so even if they didn't intentionally do anything wrong,
Exactly.
they can still be held responsible.
Right, because they were engaged in an activity that was inherently risky.
Okay, can you give me an example of that?
Yeah, so imagine a company that uses explosives for demolition.
Okay, risky business.
Very risky.
Right.
Even if they take every precaution, if someone gets injured because of those explosives,
Yeah.
they can still be held liable simply because the activity itself is so dangerous.
So in those cases, it doesn't matter if they followed all the rules.
Right.
They can still be held responsible because of the inherent risk involved.
Exactly. And that's where this objective responsibility comes in with AI.
Okay, so how does that apply to AI?
Well, think about things like self-driving cars or AI-assisted surgery.
Okay, yeah.
These are areas where even with the best technology
Yeah.
and the most careful users, there's still a significant potential for harm.
Because the technology itself is so powerful
That's
and
it.
can have such unpredictable consequences.
Right. So the article argues that in these cases,
Yeah.
even if it's not clear if there was a design flaw or user error,
Mm-hmm.
the people involved in developing and using these high-risk AI systems
Okay.
could still be held responsible simply because of the inherent risk involved.
So it's like they're acknowledging that AI is a powerful tool.
Absolutely.
And with that power comes a certain level of inherent risk.
Mm-hmm.
And someone has to bear that responsibility.
Right. And the law is still trying to figure out who that someone is.
So we've got the developers, the users, this idea of objective responsibility.
Yeah,
It seems like a legal minefield out there.
it is. It's a lot to navigate.
Is anyone trying to bring some order to this chaos?
Well, the article highlights some interesting developments in the European Union.
Okay, what are they doing?
They're working on specific directives to address AI liability.
So they're trying to get ahead of this.
Yeah, they're trying to be proactive.
Before it becomes a bigger problem.
Exactly.
So what's the main goal of these directives?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's not just about assigning blame.
Oh.
It's about setting clear standards and guidelines for AI development and use.
Okay, so they're trying to create a framework
Yeah.
to ensure that if AI does cause harm,
Mm-hmm.
there are mechanisms in place to determine responsibility and
Yeah.
provide compensation to victims.
Exactly. They're trying to adapt existing legal frameworks to this rapidly evolving technology.
That seems like a smart approach, right?
Absolutely.
Because AI is moving so fast, the law has to try to keep up.
Yeah, if it doesn't, it'll be like trying to catch a runaway train.
So what specific solutions are they considering? Is it all about lawsuits and penalties, or are there more innovative approaches on the table?
Well, there are a couple of ideas that the article mentions that I think are really interesting.
Okay, I'm all ears.
One is this idea of a compensation fund specifically for victims of AI-related incidents.
So rather than focusing solely on punishing the responsible parties,
Right.
they're also thinking about how to support those who are harmed.
Exactly. It's like a safety net
Yeah.
built into the system.
Where would the money for this fund come from?
Well, the article suggests that AI developers would contribute to this fund.
Okay, so it's like a built-in insurance policy.
Yeah, kind of like that.
That makes sense, right? Because the developers are the ones creating this technology. They should be responsible for mitigating some of the risks.
Right. It's like acknowledging that while we want to encourage AI development, we also need to be prepared for the potential downsides.
Absolutely. What's the other idea they're considering?
So the second proposal is a mandatory registry for AI systems.
A registry, like a database of all the AI systems out there.
Exactly. Developers would have to register their AI,
Okay.
providing information about its capabilities, its intended use, and any known risks.
So it's kind of like a black box for AI.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
If something goes wrong, investigators can look at this registry and get a better understanding of the AI involved.
Exactly.
That sounds like it could be a really powerful tool for transparency.
It could be if it's implemented properly.
Yeah, because transparency is key, right?
Absolutely.
If we want people to trust AI, we need to understand how it works.
And how it's being used.
Exactly.
Transparency builds trust.
So what stands out to you as the most significant takeaway from the article so far?
You know, what really fascinates me is that this goes beyond just the legal technicalities.
Okay.
It's forcing us to rethink how we define responsibility in a world that's increasingly reliant on machines that can learn and make decisions.
It's like we're in uncharted territory here.
We are, and we need a new map.
We can't just rely on the old ways of thinking?
No, because the technology is evolving faster than our legal and ethical frameworks.
So what you're saying is that this isn't just an issue for lawyers and tech experts. This is something that affects all of us.
It does, because AI is already impacting our lives in countless ways.
And it's only going to become more pervasive.
Absolutely.
So we all need to be part of this conversation.
We do. We need to understand the issues.
Yeah.
And be proactive in shaping the future of AI.
Because the future is being written right now.
It is, and we all have a role to play in that story.
So that's a great place to leave it for now.
Yeah. Lots to think about.
We'll be back in a bit to dive even deeper into this topic.
Looking forward to it.
Stay tuned.
All right. We've been talking a lot about like the legalities of AI liability, the laws and who's responsible and all that.
Yeah, the nuts and bolts of it.
Yeah. But the article really pushes us to think beyond just like the legal stuff.
Okay, so you're talking about the ethics of it all.
Yeah, the ethics. Like it's not just about who's legally on the hook,
Right.
It's about making sure that AI is developed and used in a way that's actually like aligned with our values as humans,
So it's not just about avoiding lawsuits, it's about doing what's right.
Exactly. Yeah, you can have all the laws in the world, but if the underlying principles are flawed,
Yeah.
the technology itself is going to be problematic no matter what.
Right, it's like building a house on a shaky foundation.
Yeah, exactly. Like no matter how beautiful the house is, if the foundation's messed up, it's going to come crumbling down eventually.
So when we talk about AI ethics, what are we really talking about?
Well, we're talking about things like fairness, transparency, accountability.
Okay.
Making sure that AI systems are treating people fairly,
Right.
that their decision-making processes are transparent and understandable, and that there's a way to hold these systems accountable when things go wrong.
It makes you wonder if we're sometimes, putting the cart before the horse a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
We're so focused on developing these incredibly powerful AI systems, but are we taking enough time to consider the ethical implications?
That's a really good question, and I think a lot of people are asking that right now.
Yeah.
Because we need to be proactive, not reactive, right?
Yeah, right.
It's not enough to just try to fix problems after they've already happened. We need to anticipate potential pitfalls.
Yeah.
And build safeguards into these systems from the very beginning.
So let's take a concrete example. Like AI is increasingly being used in hiring decisions, analyzing resumes, even conducting interviews. How do we make sure these systems aren't perpetuating existing biases?
That's a huge concern, and it's something that researchers and developers are really grappling with.
Right, because, we all have biases.
We do, and those biases can creep into the data that we use to train AI systems.
So even if the AI developers have the best intentions, the system itself can still learn and replicate harmful biases.
Exactly, and that's why it's so important to have diverse teams working on these systems.
Okay.
Because you need multiple perspectives to identify and mitigate potential biases during the design and training phases.
So it's not just about having the right algorithms.
Right.
It's about having the right people involved in the process.
Absolutely, and it's not just about the initial development either.
Right. What about ongoing monitoring and evaluation?
That's crucial because AI systems are constantly learning and adapting.
Right.
So we need mechanisms to track how these systems are making decisions.
Okay.
And to identify any patterns that might indicate bias or unintended consequences.
So it's like you can't just set it and forget it.
No, it's not like a Roomba. You can't just let it run loose.
Right. You have to constantly be checking in.
Yeah, making sure it's staying on track.
This makes me think about that idea of explainability in AI.
That's a big one.
Like if an AI system makes a decision that impacts someone's life,
right,
shouldn't they have the right to understand how that decision was made?
I think so. Transparency is really important.
Yeah.
Imagine applying for a loan and being denied by an algorithm.
Okay.
You'd want to know why. Right.
Of course. Yeah.
What factors were considered?
Right.
Were there any biases at play?
Without that level of transparency, it's hard to trust these systems.
Yeah. Trust is essential if we want AI to be a force for good in society. So even though this article we're looking at focuses primarily on the legal side of things, it really does raise a lot of these ethical questions as well.
It does. It makes you realize that AI is not just a technology issue. It's a societal issue.
It's about who we are, what we value, and how we want to live in the future.
Exactly. And that's a conversation that we all need to be part of.
So what's the main takeaway here?
I think the main takeaway is that we can't just sit back and let AI happen to us.
Okay.
We need to be actively involved in shaping its development and use. So it's not just about mitigating risks. It's about harnessing the potential of AI for good.
Exactly. And that's something that we can all contribute to in our own way.
Absolutely. We all have a role to play in this.
We do.
So we've spent this deep dive looking at all these legal frameworks and ethics and stuff.
It's a lot, right?
It really is. And I'm sure some people listening are like, okay, this is all very interesting, but what am I supposed to do about it? Like,
right, like it feels so big.
It feels huge.
Yeah.
Like this unstoppable force, AI. So where do we even begin? Like, what can regular people do to make sure AI is used ethically?
Well, I always say awareness is the first step.
Okay.
Like, take some time to learn about AI, what it can do, what it can't do.
Yeah.
There's tons of resources out there.
Yeah, there really are.
Articles, documentaries, even online courses.
Podcasts, right?
Oh, yeah. Definitely podcasts.
We're a little biased, though.
Right, a little.
But seriously, the more you know about AI, the better equipped you are to actually, have an opinion.
Exactly.
To advocate for change.
It's like that saying, knowledge is power.
Yeah, absolutely.
The more you understand something, the less intimidating it becomes.
And, don't underestimate the power of just being a conscious consumer.
Oh, that's huge.
Right. Like, support companies that are using AI ethically.
Yes. Vote with your wallet.
Exactly. And if a company's being shady, don't buy their products, don't use their services.
Send a message.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, talk to your friends, family,
colleagues.
Yeah, anyone who will listen.
Because the more we talk about it, the more it becomes, part of the public conversation.
Exactly. It's not just a tech industry issue.
Right.
It's a societal issue. It affects all of us.
And we can't just be passive bystanders in this whole AI revolution, right?
No, absolutely not.
Like, we have to actually engage.
Yeah.
Advocate for policies. Support organizations that are, trying to steer AI in the right direction.
Right. And let your elected officials know that this is something you care about.
Exactly. Make your voice heard.
Yep.
So it's a multi-pronged approach, right?
It is.
Educate ourselves, have conversations, be conscious consumers, advocate for change.
And ultimately, take responsibility for the way we use this technology.
Because it's a powerful tool.
It is incredibly powerful.
And like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad.
It all depends on us.
Well, I think that's a great place to wrap things up.
Yeah, I think so.
This has been a fascinating deep dive.
It has.
Into the world of AI and liability.
And ethics.
And ethics, of course.
Yeah, forget the ethics.
Never forget the ethics.
Right.
But I think most importantly, this conversation has really highlighted the need for all of us to be proactive, to engage, to think critically.
To ask questions.
Ask questions and to not be afraid to demand better.
Yes, absolutely.
From the companies developing this technology and from ourselves.
Because the future of AI is in our hands.
It really is. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
My pleasure.
We hope you learned a thing or two.
And that you'll continue the conversation.
Absolutely. Until next time, keep diving deep.
Keep diving.